All right, let's move on to our next story. Britain will have had a next general election in 2020. But in less than 24 hours, citizens will vote to determine the country's next prime minister and fill 650 seats of parliament.
Winifred Ajewale has more on the security challenge the country is facing.
Before the recent attacks in the UK, Brexit and domestic issues such as the state of the health service and the cost of care for the elderly had dominated the election campaign. But with the forthcoming election, ruling Conservatives and opposition Labour Party continue to defend their security records in the wake of an Islamist attack on the London Bridge. The attack comes as a suicide bombing that killed 22 adults and children at a pop concert in Manchester 2 weeks ago, and an attack in March which left 5 people dead in Westminster. With the issue of security topping the agenda, Prime Minister Theresa May faces further questions about her security record and her overseeing cuts to police numbers when she was Interior Minister.
Through an important moment.
According to reports, officer number decreased from 2010 to 2016 when Theresa May was Interior Minister, and the number of authorized firearms officers in England and Wales fell to just under 5,700 in 2016 from nearly 7,000 in 2010. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who has faced repeated questions over his past views and actions on security matters, says this shouldn't have happened. Corbyn has been criticised for voting against counter-terrorism legislation and expressing a reservation about police responding to attacks with shoot-to-kill tactics.
You cannot protect the public on the cheap. The police and security services must get the resources they need, not 20,000 police cuts. Theresa May was warned by the Police Federation, but she accused them of crying wolf.
Since the attack, he says he now fully supports the police actions and has pledged to recruit 10,000 new police officers, including armed officers, to help beef up security in the UK. Winifred Ajewale.
All right, that's the background to our story now. We have joining us on Skype visiting professor at the Policy Institute, King's College, London, Andrew MacLeod. Andrew, good morning. It's good to have you on right now.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. In less than 24 hours, the British people were going into elections. But in about 3 months, we've had about 3 attacks in London. How overwhelmed is the security agency or apparatus in London?
Well, 2 attacks in London, 1 in Manchester, and I wouldn't say the security apparatus is overwhelmed at all. The day after each attack, life has gone on as normal in London and indeed in Manchester, and the people of London and Manchester have come together in complete defiance of the terrorists to say we're not going to be scared, we're not going to hide, and we're going to go on with life as normal.
All right, it's only natural now that the party will have to adjust their manifesto to suit the security situation now. And those who are adjusting for the Prime Minister position. And the Conservative is looking at online security, wanting to make sure that companies now allow access to information. The Liberals are saying cybersecurity charter for company is the way forward, and that's the Labour Party rather, but the Liberals are against it completely. What is your take on the issue of online security and the party manifestos?
Online security is part of the multi-layered defence that we need to have against terrorism, and I say to people, look at online security and look at social media in the same way that we look at pedophilia and child pornography. We must crack down on child pornography and pedophilia online, and in the same way, we must crack down on terrorism, and we must crack down on those who inspire, motivate and recruit terrorists via online means. Because really, there are 3 levels of security. There is level 1, which is don't allow the circumstances to be created in which terrorism can thrive. Level 2, identify the individuals who might be susceptible or who are becoming susceptible to terrorism. And level 3, a security response once someone has decided to attack and stop them from undertaking their attack. The whole issue about social media and cybersecurity comes into level 2. If there are people who are susceptible to being recruited into terrorism. We must find them and we must stop that recruitment into terrorism. And social media and online chat rooms are one of the avenues by which the extremists recruit their vulnerable people.
All right, Andrew, the elections are coming very soon, and people will be moving all around. What impact will this, will the recent attacks have on the freedom of people to come out, or the even apathy on one hand?
I think the way the British people respond to attacks, this is probably likely to increase turnout at the election. I think the British people collectively want to say to the terrorists, we're not scared by you, we're not worried by you, we're not going to cower and hide in our homes and refuse to undertake our democratic right to vote. I suspect that more people will go out and the voter turnout will go up because people in this country will not be scared by terrorism. Remember, Britain has a long history of terrorism, going right back to the days of the IRA. The British people will not stand for thugs and bullies trying to stop them from undertaking their democratic rights.
Let's look at resources to the police now and the security apparatus. Theresa May has been blamed for slashing their budget, though she's promised to increase it if the party comes on board to from 11 billion pounds to about 15 in 2020. Will that help her case?
Well, it's absolutely right, factually, to say that she cut some of the funding to the police and security forces. That's true. It's also true to say police and security forces are asking for more. And if we go back to those 3 stages of defence I talk about, to detect terrorism before it takes place, you need to have a very strong intelligence and surveillance mechanism, and you need to have very positive relations with moderate and real Muslims within our community for people to report. Now, in each of the last 3 attacks, Manchester, Westminster Bridge and London Bridge, at least one of the attackers in each of those attacks had been known to police, had been reported to police via the moderate Muslim community, via the terrorism hotlines, and the police just did not have the resources to be able to monitor everyone, and these people slipped through the net. I mean, one of the terrorists in the London Bridge attack had been detected in Italy on his way to Syria, and the Italians warned the British, but the British didn't have the resources to be able to fully monitor everyone they needed to monitor. So it's absolutely right that the British police and security forces need more funding, and it is right to say that that Theresa May had cut security funding as her time as Home Secretary, and whomever wins the election needs to increase the amount of resources going into the security intelligence services to meet their needs.
All right, Andrew, before I let you go, what issues will be driving the voting patterns in 24 hours?
You know, I think this is probably one of the most confusing elections that Britain has faced in many years. For a lot of people, Brexit, the vote for Britain to leave the European Union, is a big issue. For some, security is a big issue. But then there are lots of the bread and butter and nuts and bolts issues about employment, about government austerity post-financial crisis, about what is the economic model for the UK after it leaves the EU? How is funding to the National Health Service going? How's funding to education going? So there's a lot of normal issues that you have across the British electorate at the moment. And then you put on top of that terrorism, you put on top of that the Brexit vote. So I think this is a very, very difficult election to predict.
Okay, finally now, let's look at each of the candidates now. The top contenders now is between the Conservative and the Labour Party. The Liberals are also pulling their weight. Who do you think will carry the day?
Well, I think that Theresa May will still get over the line. I think she'll probably have a slightly reduced majority, but still have a majority. There is an outside chance that she'll have a hung parliament and need to negotiate some degree of coalition with other parties. There is a very small chance that the Labour Party might be able to cobble together a coalition with the Scottish National Party and the Liberal Democrats. It is possible, but unlikely. You've seen in this last week that the swing back to the Labour Party has kind of peaked in the polling, and I suspect that you're going to have a slightly reduced majority to Theresa May, but a return of the Conservative government.
Professor Andrew MacLeod, visiting professor at the Policy Institute, King's College London. Thank you for talking to us on TVC
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. All right, everyone's waiting to see how the turnout of the election will be tomorrow, and people, where he has said that the British people have always like to take a stand against terrorists and letting them know they cannot be intimidated by them.
Indeed.
So we look forward to seeing
and we are
that
standing
tomorrow.
shoulder to shoulder with them.
All right. This is where we come to the end of today's edition of the program. Tomorrow, we'll be back again with other issues that affect Nigeria and people across the world. Thank you very much. I am Mike Okwache.
And I am Busola Mituashe. Bye for now.